Members, we now move to Schedule 3, and the question is that Schedule 3 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Members, we now come to the clauses, and the question is that clauses 1 and 2 stand part. Stuart Nash.
So keen
Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge me, I would just like to point out one thing, if I may, please. If the Minister might like to do this actually, go to section 261B, section OB1 amended. Part 1 and Part 2 are actually exactly the same. So you may want to remove 1 or 2 of those. It's just something that needs to be done. I'm sure we won't complain if you do it and without bringing it back to the Select Committee, but just tidies up the legislation. 261. Now, this is called the Taxation Annual Rates for 2016 Research and Development and Remedial Matters Bill. This is one of those bills, Mr. Chair, where it covers everything. But what they do with some of these tax bills, what the government does is it sneaks things in there. So it sounds really good. It sneaks them in there. I mean, we're all into R&D. We all want to see R&D spend increase. There is no doubt about that. We have one of the lowest levels of R&D in the OECD, and we understand that it is imperative that our R&D spend increases if we're going to lift this economy and have a knowledge-based way forward. It is important. This is what our economy is built on. However, and there is always a however, this is very, very piecemeal. David Clark is probably going to talk about this a little bit later in his 5-minute contribution, but we would have gone 10-minute contribution, a lot further, Mr. Speaker, than this bill does. This is really tinkering around the edges, and even in Select Committee it was admitted this is a little bit of suck it and see. Let's see how this thing goes. There's a couple of definitions that aren't that clear. Are we allowed to claim back employees' salaries or contractors' wages, etc., etc.? But it just tinkers around the edges. This is not the sort of bill, Mr. Chair, that is going to drive R&D spend, that is going to allow these little innovative companies to really grow to listed organisations or go global, or the sort of organisation we need to drive economic growth in this country. This is tinkering around the edges. And to say remedial matters, the dictionary definition of remedial matters is to remedy or to cure. We don't agree that this bill does much of that. We certainly don't agree with Part 2, which is about the annual rates for 2015 and 2016. We think they are inequitable. I remember Dr. Clark speaking very eloquently about this last year when we actually talked about the fact that tax needs to be equitable to be able to deliver the sort of outcomes that society demands right across all our communities. These rates do not do that. There is nothing remedial about the rates that are in Part 2 of this bill, Mr. Chair. In fact, Mr. Chair, there are a number of tax bills that are coming before the FEC at the moment, and Labor is lukewarm on a lot of them. But none of them are really delivering the sort of tax reform that is needed in this country, Mr. Chair. We have had a series of 3 bills that even the submitters became confused about and started submitting on bills that weren't before the committee, and we had to gently remind them, if you put your submission in and come back in 3 weeks' time, we'd love to hear what you have to say. Even the submitters were confused on this, let alone the general public. As for this bill, Mr. Chair, it could have been and it should have been so much better. The R&D tax credit is something that is really needed in this country in order to drive the growth that Andrew Bailey has been involved with for a long time. Mr. Bailey must read this sort of stuff, sort of mop his brow and go, we can do better, but he's too scared to sort of stand up and let Mr. English know that, or whoever's in charge of this sort of stuff. Should be better, could be better, must do better. And Mr. Chair, this is the difference between the national government and the next Labor government. We will do better. We will put R&D tax policy that will make a difference. And yes, there will be another R&D remedial matters tax bill back in this House before 3 years. It will be a Labor bill, and it will make a serious difference to the small to medium enterprises. And it's not going to be the sort of bill that gives $50 million to Sanford Well, why would you? Well, I suppose he's the president of the National Party, so it helps. This is going to be the sort of bill that gives meaningful support to those businesses that we want to grow, that have a mandate to grow, and we are going to give them a mandate to grow. It's not about cheap money, Mr. Chair. It's not about a hand up. It's not about a handout. It's about a hand up and a help, because we understand that this business sector is the backbone of the economy, Mr. Chair. We understand that R&D must happen. We understand on this side, Mr. Chair, that R&D deserves a hell of a lot better attention than this bill gives it.
The Honourable Michael Woodhouse.
Thank you.